I wanted to talk today in light of the crackdown in DC on the homeless population, a little bit about homelessness, because a lot of the commentary is obviously shots in the dark and people who don't have any actual information. Before I get into that, and before I forget about it, it also begs this question that everyone should be asking themselves who's upset about what's happening, and that is, how many homeless people have you ever personally helped? And I'm not talking about giving money to organizations. I mean, how many people have you ever fed, assisted, given first aid to, given money to? Not that that's the way to help them, but it is a question that needs to be asked. Is your concern for them real or imaginary? Because in truth, most of the outcry and most of the care about other people and their plight is largely imaginary and a way to show self-righteousness without actually having to take any action. So unless you've actually done anything, shut up. And that's why I'm here, because I have a little bit more of experience than you might suspect with homelessness. Not because I was only homeless for 2 weeks, but between having to, when I got divorced, I was homeless for 2 weeks until I found a place to stay. And that's the first thing is there's a lot of people out there who are temporarily homeless. This town I know I live in here has a lot of people who are couch surfing, who basically will mooch off of a person and sleep on their couch for a while and then are somewhere in between while they find someone else to mooch off of who will let them surf on their couch for free or for cheap. And this happens all the time. Yeah, so there's a lot of people who are just in a transitional state who are homeless, like I was, for about a brief period of time. Mine was under 2 weeks, about 11 days. So I wasn't like, bereft, or I slept in a tent. I owned the tent. I slept in a campground. I was the only person in the campground, so the guy who was running the campground would come by and talk to me, and while I would cook dinner. And so I wasn't homeless in the classical sense. I was, but I didn't have a home. And that's technically means I'm homeless. The second group of people is the group of people that everyone thinks is homeless. And those are the people who are homeless because society's social safety net isn't catching them correctly or helping them as efficiently as we would like. And you're all familiar, probably. If not, you should go watch it because it's a good movie for many reasons. The movie Pay It Forward, where Haley Joel Osment's character helps Jim Caviezel's character as part of his attempt to make the world a better place. He brings Jim Caviezel into his home, hides him in the garage, helps him get cleaned up so that he can get a job interview and get a job. And then Jim Caviezel's character goes back to his previous life because, number one, it's all he knows. And number two, except for Haley Joel Osment, everyone he knows is also an addict. His friends are all drug addicts. Haley Joel Osment's mother is an alcoholic who works at a casino, I think, on Fremont Street. And so there are fewer opportunities for him to meet people who are quality people and break out of that. The social safety net also is ineffective, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. The third group of people that are homeless are people who are homeless because they choose to be. There's a lot more of those than you realize. People like to talk about all the homeless veterans and such, which is funny because nobody gives a flying pinwheel about homeless veterans until the GOP starts rounding them up, and then all of a sudden we care. But that's another story for another time. So let me talk about why I know a little bit more about this than you, or than you would think. When I was at university on Sunday mornings, I would go for a walk downtown, dressed in my suit, and hang out with the homeless people. So keep in mind, I'm somewhere between the ages of 18 and 19 years old at the time. So I'm an 18, 19-year-old boy who is dressed up in a suit and tie and who goes out to visit of his own free will and choice for some reason with the homeless people while he waits for church at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I had an unlimited meal plan at the university, and so I would go have breakfast at 7 o'clock, and then I would take things, because you could take, with an unlimited plan, I could take whatever I wanted whenever I wanted, as long as I could carry it. It was like I could take the cappuccino machine, assuming I wanted cappuccinos. And then I would take food down with me to the river, which was about a 3/4 mile walk from the campus. And then I would hang out with the homeless people. And I think originally, until the homeless people got close enough to see, thought I was a cop, because who in Hoboken hangs out on the river on Sunday morning dressed in a suit and tie? by himself because I wasn't part of an organization. And I'm not telling you this to brag about, oh, the great thing was. This is for context. Because to be honest, I don't know what possessed me to do this. I just did it. And I didn't ask any questions about it. And it was really dangerous. And so I don't know that I necessarily recommend you going and hobnobbing as a young person with the homeless ad libitum like I did. But I eventually developed rapport with them, and people recognized that I was on the level, and that when I was there, the cops would leave us alone because there's a different relationship between cops and the homeless and cops and a dude in a suit. And so when I was there with them, the cops would. I remember a couple of times the cops would ask me, "Are you okay, sir?" "Yeah, I'm fine." I'm fine. I'm just hanging out with my friends that I see every Sunday that happen to be homeless. And they would leave. And so eventually there would be like 20 or 30 of us just hanging out in this section of, there was a couple of tables in this grassy area. I can't remember exactly where it was, but you got the river running by, and then there's a bike path and a grassy area, and there were a whole bunch of picnic tables. And we'd just be sitting there, having breakfast and chatting, me in a suit and them all in whatever they owned. And because they knew that, and they were the ones who gate kept for me. There were people who tried to join our group. They wouldn't let join. And these were people that were the undesirables, the ones that they're using as exemplars, the ones who are schizophrenic, the ones who were violent, the ones who were on drugs. The other homeless people wouldn't let those people hang out with us, I think because they were trying to protect me. Number one, I'm feeding them. Number two, if something happens to me, that's going to create a whole bunch of drama and problems for all of them. And they don't want that. So they watched out for me. And I learned from their group, there were two other groups of homeless people that I was talking to, besides the ones that everyone likes to point out. One of those groups was people who decided to be homeless. And the other was people who were just in between and weren't sure what they were going to do, and they hadn't made any commitments yet. Because there's plenty of people in that boat. In my age bracket at the time, those people were college students. We don't know what we're going to do. We finish high school. Let's go to college and figure it out. And there's also homeless people who are just trying to get away from their parents and the rules too, just like college students. But they're homeless instead of living in a dorm and pretending to be making something of their lives. I have the same thing near where I live now. I live near the edge of the city. If you go to the edge of the city, the desert starts and the city just abruptly ends because it's BLM land. And if you look up on the mountain to the west of town at night, sometimes you can see lights in the caves because those are homeless people. And I'm going to tell you a couple of stories about real people because they illustrate my argument that a lot of homeless people are people who do not want your help. They are there because that's where they want to be. And that's the point. It's not about my largesse and my graciousness and going, it was the avenue to getting to know them. And before people jump to conclusions about why people are homeless or there's a bunch of veterans, then go ask them and talk to them. Because I met homeless veterans at university on the river. They were people who didn't relate to anyone else. And they didn't expect to relate to me because I was 18 or 19 years old. But they also they weren't pissed off at me because I didn't know how to relate to. You don't know what it's like to go to Nam. Of course I don't know what it's like to go to Nam. Nam ended before I was born. But they also didn't expect me to. And I didn't expect them to behave a certain way. I took them at face value, and they took me at face value. And we would sit and have a chat. And I remember a couple of times I go home for like Thanksgiving or Christmas, and I come back and hey, where were you? I went home for, all right. Like, I do have a home I can go to. You have made a decision not to, and they showed up. Wonder where that guy is. And I don't even know if they knew my name. It doesn't matter. But they were, where were you? We missed you. And I went home for Thanksgiving. Oh, right, that was Thanksgiving. They're not even paying attention to what's going on in the world. They don't want to be a part of it. And so there were people down there, the PTSD veterans. There was also a guy I vividly remember. He was in the 70s. His gay lover died, and he lost all desire to be a part of society. He was a former college professor, not at the college I was at. A former college professor who just quit his job and had been homeless since the 70s. So over 25 years, he'd been living wherever he could. There was also another group of people there. There were a couple of them. I remember two guys. One was a guy, one was a girl, who they were there because they made more money begging for change than they could at a job. And I've always wanted to try that. Because I remember that sometimes. You see them at the edge of the freeway, any help. And I want to stand there with a sign that says, it's a science experiment. I want to know how well they actually do. Because you've heard the rumors, right? But these are people who told me that this particular town had a lot of generous people, and they could go down and make about $200 in a couple of hours begging downtown. Now, at the time, I was making $6 an hour. So in a full day before taxes, I was making about $70. And they're telling me, yeah, every time we go begging for money, we make about $200. So it's 3 times what I'm making. I get the appeal. It's one of the reasons I wanted to try, because I want to know how profitable it really is. I also want to know if they were lying to me. But they were there because it gave them enough. $200. I can live on $200 a day. I went to Europe this summer, and it cost me about $200 a day. That's including airfare, and about $220, $230 a day, including the airfare to get there. So yeah, I can live on $200 a day, and they're not even paying to stay somewhere, because my $200 a day includes the place I stayed. So there are people there who choose to be there. There are people there who, because of other choices, can't stay at the places that are provided. Some of the people who needed help told me that the shelters had limitations or restrictions. And I sort of know that because for several years, the Harley group that I belong to, we fed the homeless. The corner we used to feed them at is now a big Amazon distribution center. We got thrown off the property by Amazon because they wanted to build a building there and not have homeless people lining up there for food. But I know a lot of the people I worked with were like, we need to do more for them than just feed them for the day, because a lot of people, that's what they get. And I had a student a couple of years back who called me up and was like, hey, a friend of mine, we want to do boxed meals for the homeless for Christmas. I said, don't do it for Christmas. Everybody's going to be out there for Christmas. And let's do it for some other day, like January, Martin Luther King weekend day or something, when everyone's forgotten about them. And we had really good people. It was received really well. Seriously? Food now? Because everybody thinks about them at Thanksgiving and Christmas, but not in January, which is also cold. So we gave away socks and just bag lunches, apple, some fruit, just made peanut butter sandwiches, but it was something. And a lot of people were very gracious. It was received very graciously. And I went with them because they're both girls. And I still have the jacket, but I don't have the Harley anymore. But so I know a little bit about it, but that's not what they need. It just gets them through the day. What they really need is to be moved out of their circumstances. But people aren't willing to go to that level of effort. We like to write checks or make donations, click buttons, and donate to causes. We don't want to go down there and engage with them personally. And I get it. I look at some of them and go, do I want them to know where I live? Do I want them to know that I live alone? Do I want to invite them in and have them take a shower? If I was Haley Joel Osment, would I sneak them into my garage without my mom's knowledge? And she has a shotgun. Yeah, probably not. So I'm not sure what to do either. There's a guy who lives up on the mountain here I've talked to at length. I see him at least twice a week in the evenings because he will walk down from the mountain into town and get supplies and take them back up. He's one of the ones that has he's a generator and all sorts of other stuff up there. So he's up there. I asked him, I had a long conversation with him once about 10 years ago. And, is there anything you need? He's like, yeah, a bulletproof vest. Because people will just come up to the edge of town and just shoot their guns into the desert. And I'm afraid I'm going to get shot. He's up there because he's hiding from his ex-wife. Because he doesn't want her to get his money. And it seems like a really lot of effort to go to hide money from an ex-wife. Because if he has that kind of money, he can go to the Dominican Republic or something and live there and not have to live in a cave in the desert in the summertime. Seems dumb to me, but that's his choice. So there are people who are homeless by choice. There are people who are homeless because the options are not choice. So to go out there and say that, oh my gosh, it's this terrible thing is a non sequitur, because that's not the whole story. Homelessness is not a crime. Trespassing is the crime. We throw people off of campus all the time who are homeless as soon as they do stuff that puts the livelihood of our students at risk. There's one hanging out in the student union, outside the student union right now. She's been there, I don't know, every day for months. Asian girl in a hoodie in 113-degree heat yesterday, charging her devices, yelling into her phone in whatever her native language is. As long as she doesn't yell at students or make a problem, the cops ignore her because it's a public building. But if she hangs out on my front yard, I have every right to trespass her. And that's what they're doing. Homelessness is not a crime. Homelessness is unfortunate. They're being removed because they're on property where they're not allowed to be doing things they're not allowed to do that put the public at risk. So, not all homeless people are homeless for the same reason. Not all things we do to help the homeless work. Not everyone who complains about how terrible it is helps the homeless. And people forget that it's not homelessness that's the crime. It's the crimes that are done by homeless people. Okay? Homelessness is not a crime. Homelessness is a consequence of other choices. And if you want homelessness to stop, you have to change the choices available to the people whose choices make them homeless. Remember, some of those people are choosing to be homeless on purpose. If you want the guy that lives up on this mountain to not be homeless, you got to change the divorce laws so his wife won't get whatever. I don't even know how much money he has. I don't care. You have to change those laws or he's going to stay up there forever. If you want the guy whose gay partner died to not be homeless, you need to give him a purpose that will make him not want to be homeless and be part of society again. And the people that they like to use the tug at our heartstrings about, you have to give them something that actually will help them. They have to put them in circumstances where they'll be surrounded by people who will believe in them and uplift them. And that's hard work and doesn't pay well, so people don't do it. That's why Pay It Forward is a fiction movie and not a documentary, because it didn't happen. And I'm sure it does happen to a degree. But people are not going out there and finding people who live in their cars and offering them a better life. Not as a standard rule. And that's why homelessness is a problem. So if you have been homeless, I feel for you. I know there are tons of people here who live in the tunnels underneath the strip, who live in the drainages, who live in the wilderness, who live in the parks, who live on campus until they get caught. We even had a professor who was living in his office, also illegal. It's called squatting. So you can't live here. But we've had homeless people who live in the parking lot because you can live in the parking lot if you're an enrolled student. There are solutions. Those are not the ones we're talking about, and no one is interested in those. They just want to complain about, oh my gosh, Orange Man bad, because he's rounding up the homeless. Well, if the homeless are causing problems for the other people, he has a responsibility to do that. Everyone who's in charge of law enforcement, and the President of the United States is the chief law enforcement officer of the country, like it or not, has the responsibility to take care of the rest of his constituents who are expecting him to take care of their safety. This is why some conservatives are upset with some Democrats, is because there's some Democrats who their cities and their states, like San Francisco and California in general, are overrun with squalor because the mayors and the governors are not doing things to protect the residents who are paying them and voting for them to protect them. So I think there's a Mayor Adams over there, the governor's Newsom. People are upset with them, and rightly so, because we pay you to look out for our interests, and you're looking out for this really tiny thing and letting the tail wag the dog. I just wanted you to know there's a little bit more to the story than that. You don't have to go down on Sunday mornings and take food and hang out with the homeless for 3 or 4 hours. That's something I did. I did it because I was bored, and because I figured it would be something that I wouldn't feel bad about doing on a Sunday, since I didn't have any friends or anything else to do. Complaining about it on the internet, posting comments under videos, complaining that the Orange Man is bad, isn't going to make anything better. If you want to see a miracle, you need to be the miracle. And if you want to do something, then you need to do something. Talk is cheap. Put your money where your mouth is and go out there and do something. One last story, because like I said, some homelessness is temporary. There are a lot of people in a transitionary state. There was a day I was at Del Taco. That's irrelevant other than that's the true place where I was. And I think I had a coupon for 2-for-1 burritos. And I didn't really need 2 burritos. I'm like, I'll buy a second one because it doesn't cost me any extra money. And I remember walking out, and there was a guy who approached me and said, I'm homeless. I just got divorced. I'm homeless and I'm hungry. Can you help me? And I said, well, I have 2 burritos. Do you want one? And he took it and started eating it immediately. And I knew that he was legit. A lot of people are skeptical about whether or not the homeless are legit. If you're concerned about that, give to an organization in which you believe. If you aren't comfortable doing it, there are other ways to do it. Because yes, it's very hard to tell if they're going to buy drugs with it, if they're not really homeless, if they're doing it because they don't want to get a job, because a lot of them don't want a job and they don't want a home. But this guy did, and he took the burrito, and he was scarfing it down. Save some for later, dude. And I knew then that's why I felt like I should buy 2 burritos. And I've never seen the guy again. I hope that he got on his feet. For the moment, that was something that I could do that was comfortable, and it didn't cost me a thing. I was already buying 1 burrito, and the other one didn't cost me a thing. Especially if it doesn't hurt you, go do it. You can go join a group that's already given out food and just help give out the food. That won't cost you any money. You can donate your clothes. You can go down and help sort stuff that gets donated. There are things you can do. Every worthy thing you do counts. But complaining on the internet doesn't help anybody, unless you're just looking for likes and support. I don't care about that, as you can tell. I don't care if you like this video, if you agree with me or not. Make your own videos. I can't make videos based on your experiences. I can only base them on mine. Anyway, go do every good thing you can for everyone you can. I read a book, The Greatest Salesman in the World, years ago, called by Og Mandino, and in the book he says, treat everyone you are to meet today as if they would be dead by midnight. Extend to them all the courtesy, the kindness, and the care that you can, and your life will never be the same. And he didn't say it would be better, but he was right. It's never been the same. Every day is different, and I find different ways and different people who need something from me every day. And I've been doing it long enough now that usually right afterwards, God tells me that's what I needed you to do today. And it's kind of a cool thing. Anyway, Godspeed. I hope you never end up homeless, and I hope that you find a way to help people who really need help. Not just getting them to tomorrow, but getting them to a better, brighter future. Godspeed.